So, what we also are taking a look at, and we're trying to make sure that we get an understanding of, we talked about attendance and we talked about giving being metrics of health. We talked about Rick Warren talking about these that people in terms of numbers are involved in the metric of health. We also have talked about Ed Stetzer's growth and maturity, that as you grow, it's a metric of health, that you have a greater loyalty to attend and a greater desire to give and to be connected with the issues of giving. Again, as we take a look into those particular kind of issues that are there, it also makes us aware that we should talk about what are new metrics as we're going into a new age and as we're going to a new time, what become new metrics of giving. What we also are taking a look at, and we're trying to make sure that we get an understanding of, we talked about attendance and we talked about giving being metrics of health. We talked about Rick Warren talking about these the people in terms of numbers. So that becomes important to us to make sure that we do understand that and we do make a connection with that particular piece. What are new metrics for our giving and new ways that we might be able to give? New ways that we might be able to give and to be involved in the metrics process is to look at things like that have to do with attendance, which has to do with us counting numbers and taking a look at counting those numbers, have to do with issues like neighborhood flourishing, what I'd like to call neighborhood interdependence. So there's an article out there that's there that helps us to understand this kind of pieces from what's called PushPay, pushpay.com. You can look it up on the internet. Is a company called PushPay, and they have they have 4 or 5 different ways for new matrix, and so I'd like to talk about some of their new matrix. They call it neighborhood flourishing. I call it, my word, neighborhood interdependence. That the more that the church becomes dependent on the neighborhood's connectivity, the more the church is needed in the church. And therefore, if the church was wiped off the corner, it would affect the community. Does your church have a community interdependent connection? If it does, it's needed and the community needs the church. If not, then there could be a place by which the community itself doesn't need you and you exist outside the community. You don't want that. The new matrix is to find out how much is your church needed in your community. As we push forward into the new age and into the new time about attendance versus daily life, we should be involved in the daily life of our community and be interdependent with them and not be able to be removed off that corner or off that street. That becomes very important for us. And so we want to look at that. Now, where else we should show up in neighborhood flourishing is that we should visit the crime rate. We should look at homelessness. We should look at dropout rates in our community. We should look at indicators in our community that show us where there is a trouble and loss. And our church should make an effect. We should look to change those kinds of things that have to do with, as I was saying, the crime rate, and have to do with things that have to go on with how many people are being cared for in our neighborhood. What is the dropout rate of our school? We should be making a difference of those particular pieces and engage them. So those are new matrix for studying our healthiness. Also, in the new matrix, we should take a look at the issue that has to do with membership engagement. And when we start talking about the issues of membership engagement, we're really talking about, are our members engaged in our Sunday school? Are our members engaged in the everyday life of our church? Are our members in our small groups? Because Members don't just bond to the large group, they're made members in very small groups. Well, let's make sure those small groups are being used for solid growth of our members in the church. So don't just judge how many members you have, but let's go into the future judging now how many of our members are engaged in small groups. Small groups don't have to be just a set-aside small devotional group. It could actually be the usher board. It could be the elders board. It could be the deacons board. It could also be the choir. It could be an outreach ministry. All those things become places where people can make connections and be involved in the life of the church. Isn't that important? Also, we should measure outreach. We should measure the outreach that people have in the outreach pursuit. Do we have things going on in the church community, where we're sending people out into the church community to do things like what? To engage youth at the parks that are there, to go into the high schools that are there, and to help for students to set up Bible studies within their own high schools so they can have those that are there. Are we serving a chaplaincy role for children that are behavioral kids that are in the high schools that are there? Are we working with the police department? Are we sharing with parents that are having trouble with their teenagers? Are we having a ministry for marriages that are hurting, for groups that are in some form of addiction? Are we into the community, sharing what we have with that community that is out there? That becomes, again, very important issues for us to do. And then finally, what I'm calling the reverse attention. We should measure, as I said before, interdependency. We should measure membership engagement, and we should also marry outreach pursuits. What are we doing? And we should have what is called reverse attendance. Luke chapter 15 says that Jesus left the 99 and went after the one. So we should be going from 1 to 99. We should be looking at that one person and do reverse attention and be paying attention to the one that is out in the community, outside the gates, and helping them leave the people that are in the church to reach the people that are outside the gate and reverse the process and do something a little bit different than we have done it before. Well, that takes us to the issues of attendance to daily life, going from this one-time occurrence to dealing with people with daily life. That takes us to a place to talk about what we had, a study that we had already done, going from physical brick and mortar to digital footprint, having a digital footprint. You don't lose it. It's physical and digital footprint. You want to be able to have both of them and have both of them in place. When we do have both of them in place, we are creating a hybrid. We're creating a dual emphasis. We're giving God more platforms to work from. We don't want to reduce them. We want to increase them. And what the digital life allows us to do is to go into people's daily lives. Remember, the physical aspect, we got to draw people out. How many times can we draw them to our physical building? That's a problem we had in the pre-pandemic time. In the post-pandemic time, we're still going to have people that are going to come together in attendance as we go forward, but now we can have our digital time serve them on a daily basis and be involved in much more daily activities. Therefore, my point that I have of point number 2 is that we want to be able to connect to the digital audience. So we want to be able to have things so that we reach out into the digital audience. What do I mean by that? We need to have ministries that could even occur 2-3 times a week so that we have things that reach out and things that go into recording so people can bring them up at different times so that we have them there. And something that I'm not always good at, something that I want to be better at, is that we should also be able to make sure that when we reach out in an audience where we're in brick and mortar, that we're also at the same time keep talking to our digital audience. Don't lose the digital audience because we're going back to brick and mortar. Keep talking to them. I want to do that, and I want to do a better job at doing it. And I'm challenging you to do it too as you go forward. Some of the other things that we want to look at being able to do is looking at what has happened with the digital audience. What we found out was at the beginning of the pandemic, early in the pandemic, the digital audience went up. It raised. More people were involved in watching when it first happened. It was a new fad. But Barnard tells us that that audience fell off over time, and we did not get the same attention there. And that some people were not even watching a digital service even once a month. And so there was a great drop-off that happened there along the way. So again, we want to be aware at that change that occurred and that happened and be able to continue thinking, how can we minister in an environment like that? Also, we want to know that today, when they measure some of the most committed, dedicated people about church, people who say that they have a positive belief system, was attending church well, when they measure that dedication now digitally, they're finding that 60% of the people who have not returned to church service yet are only watching church once. They're watching church once a week. And so it has minimized, and it's just on Sunday morning, so they're not watching any other church services. Now, part of that may be because we're not offering a lot, and some of us may be offering a lot, and we have to find ways that we can advertise them into the life of our believers. But we need to make sure that we're giving good offerings through the week so they can engage in them and so they can be part of digital life on a daily life basis. That's what the numbers are showing us. That's the kind of things that are out there right now that we need to be talking about, of course. As we begin to continue to look at what's going on, what's happening in the digital environment, I want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in church life in general throughout North America. Now remember, Christianity is growing in the world. That's not the problem. People are now going to church in Africa and in Asia and in Latin America at numbers they've never gone at before. Christianity is growing. Christianity, at least in terms of attendance, has shifted and changed in America. It's this particular change that I would like to talk about right now. That there's a national change away from church, being in church, in some church someplace. And that there also is a change that's going on in the frequency. A frequency has changed, and that is that people are leaving from the 4 services and going to 1 service, leaving from 4 services and going to 1 service. Now, let me tell you what that does. If just 50% of the church leaves from 4 service and goes to 1 service, 50% of the church does that, and they now come 3 Sundays. In other words, they give up 1 Sunday, and they go up 3 Sundays instead of 4 Sundays. A church that averaged 200 people in membership would now be only averaging 175. They'd be losing 25 people per Sunday if it was balanced out perfectly, and they would now be dropping at 175. So it shows a lot of attendance drop in the overall numbers in the United States, but that doesn't mean necessarily that people have stopped being a member of a church. They just stopped the attendance frequency that they had before, which is throwing off our membership numbers. So we have to treat it differently. We need to know how to address some of these changes that are going on and some of the changes that we are seeing now. So people don't attend church at the same level of frequency that they did before. Well, I brought you some statistics and some things to discuss what it is that we can do about the kinds of changes that we're seeing. Well, this is what it says about membership life, how we can affect membership life in daily life of reaching out and trying to give people the importance of church life. First of all, we have to have a greater membership expectation. So we should build a greater membership expectation. Don't believe that everybody has an understanding about how important membership is. And so we have to make sure that we can establish that, discuss it, and talk about it. Number two, we have to go back to new membership classes and talk about membership responsibility. Remember, if everybody decided not to come to church anymore, we'd have some real problems on our hand, wouldn't we? I mean, nobody would be there. Nobody would work the camera even. Nobody worked the audio. Of course, there needs to still be people participating in regular church life with each other. And then there needs to be the issues of membership, of ministry involvement. Now, it's real simple. You will miss church if nobody needs you. If nobody's expecting you, and if church can function without you, you have a greater tendency to miss church. That's what the statistics say. But if you are needed in church, and people are going to miss you, because you have to do anything from singing the choir to usher to run the soundboard, then there's a less likelihood for you to miss church. Ministerial involvement will increase this kind of membership commitment in this life-term membership commitment. So therefore, a shift that's happening in our society does not mean that we simply have to decrease, but it might mean decentralization. It might mean that we have to present ourselves on more platforms than we presented ourselves on before. Well, that's some pretty important stuff for us to know and to understand and to struggle with. But let's also talk about how we can bring membership into our daily life. Let's talk about how we can bring membership just into our daily life and what we do. So, one of the first things to realize as we move membership into our daily life is that membership has to be something that we are trying to make sure that we are providing as many platforms for people to be engaged and to connect with them as possible. So David Adamson says that there needs to be a movement from an omni-platform to a multi-channel platform. That we need to move from just one setting to multiple settings that we can now reach people on. So yes, church service on Monday, church service on Wednesday, but let's also provide a digital atmosphere for people to participate and be engaged in on Monday, Tuesday, on Friday, on Saturday, devotions first thing in the morning. Let's be part of their everyday lifestyle. And so instead of them seeing us on one platform and having to choose whether they're going to see us in person in brick and mortar or online digital, they can see us in multiple platforms, and a healthy count of a healthy church is counting all these platforms and all of our different engagements that we might have with people along the way. Number two is that there needs to be an increase in occurrences with relevancy, meaning that let's deliver more material on a day-to-day function, but make it ensure that it's relevant, to make sure that it is there for us along the way and that it's real. So we want to make sure that we are doing that. So more material, but more relevancy as we go along the way. It's also a question that we want to make sure that we push from being general to push to a place where we will be specific, from general to specific. So we don't just talk about general applications, but we talk about what's going on with people at work. We talk about what's going on with them and their family. We talk about what's happening with teenagers. We make it specific, or we even provide devotions that are specifically angled at the people who are alone, or the people who are single, or the people who are retired, so that we can aim our ministry to certain particular areas and expand it out in daily life over a week, instead of always having to be so general that may occur in a regular church service that's there. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're also having things that we have morning devotions, which means they're listening to you in the morning with devotion. Remember, many people are listening to digital deliveries for their morning devotions. Why isn't it that can it be their pastor or somebody who's a minister in their local church? Also, that you can give them things to do at work. They want to listen to it because they want to hear how to treat a coworker. They want to hear how to engage with their boss. They want to know what to say when they see somebody who's not saved at work. So you can give them relevant things to engage them in the lifestyle while they're at work. And then always issues that are crisis. Application to real life crisis. What to do when you lose a loved one. What to do when your children don't come home. What to do when you might be going through a divorce. Real issue crisis, daily life interpretations of things to care for and things to interact about. This makes sure that we are involved in the daily life process with people. That's important. That's special. And that makes ministry have value to it. Let me say it this way. Added value. People already have a very valuable life. Now you can make sure that you're adding to the value and not an extension or an addition. You're part of what they need in their everyday life and to engage in it. Finally, what have we talked about today and what have we really discussed? What is today really all about? Well, let me pop this up for you and tell you what we talked about in this kind of attendance, one-time focus on bricks and mortar, which is important, and moving to a platform where we have a daily life engagement. In this daily life engagement, we've talked about new matrix of health. What are these new matrix of health? They're a way by which we can measure the outreach of the church, measure the effect of the church on the community. We can measure things that are greater than just attendance and how much tithes are we bringing in. Even though all these points of measurements are important for us. We have also talked about the issues that have to do with membership education, making sure that we teach members about their responsibility, their commitment, and their dedication to the church and the church at large. Then we talked about the issues about new multiple delivery options, different ways to deliver, different platforms that we can come to. Instead of just having one way to deliver to people, we can have multiple platforms to deliver, and we don't have to just bring everybody together in church, which is complicated and difficult to do. We can deliver 7 days a week in a digital platform into their homes. Doesn't have to be just the pastor. It can be ministers, it can be deacons, it can be elders, all helping to create a continuous view of church from Monday through Sunday. Now, what does that do? Can you imagine the input in the employment that you did when now you have your deacons and your ministers and your leaders in the church all sharing to produce content to deliver to people on a day-to-day function? So they pull up their phone, they look at you, they see what's going on, and then they go through their day. Some of these things are just 6-minute to live by moments. Why don't we make sure that we're providing the kind of ministry that would be needful and would be there? Then finally, we want to make sure that we have engaged the frequency for daily application. Engage the frequency for daily application. I don't think that the North American church needs to lose out in church attendance, and we need to be in a place where nobody attends our brick and mortar churches. We just need to make sure that we engage in those things about frequency and make it make sense. And then we manage total frequency, global frequency. How many people are in our Facebook? How many people are connected to our YouTube channel? How many are on Instagram? How many people are connected to our brick and mortar? And how many people are we streaming to on an ongoing basis? All these things become very, very important to us. And we should look at the future of the church being involved in going to a new frontier, not leaving yesterday, but we're creating a hybrid that's important for tomorrow. Let me give you one example before I leave you today. People found out. Remember, malls closed up everywhere because people started doing some online shopping, and it really began to affect the brick and mortar places that was out there. But let me tell you what they found out. A lot of people still want to come in and touch the fiber. They still want to look at the material. People are still going to stores. They realize that as popular as online has become, people still want to come into a store, and they don't want to give up the store option to see it in real life. Well, let me tell you something. What stores have done that have been successful is they've created a hybrid presentation to make sure they have a more brick and mortar and an online presence. The church needs to understand that if that's what's going on in society today, and we have a global mission to reach people for Christ, then we can also have a buy effort to reach people in more than one platform going forward. Excited about being with you, excited about teaching things that make us relevant, and glad to spend time with you. It's Mike Reynolds coming to you from Dr. Reynolds Ministries, where Erica Reynolds is the producer helping us to make it happen. Thank you again. God bless you. May the Lord watch over you. May the Lord keep you. And may the Lord bless you like never before. In Jesus' name, amen and amen.